This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to the South today. I'm Daryl Baser. New Zealand is in the second week of the Level 3 alert status in the fight to stop the spread of the coronavirus known as COVID-19. At this afternoon's media announcement, Finance Minister Grant Robertson says next week's budget will be a very different one from the one he'd hoped to deliver.
Our recovery will continue with interventions to sustain households and businesses and get people working, in combination with sector-specific support to help boost wider economic confidence and regenerate some of the sectors hit hardest by the pandemic. We've already supported early hit industries like forestry, tourism and the media sector. Budget 2020 will carry on this work. Continuing our collaborative approach, the support packages for sectors are being designed in consultation with industry leadership. Support will naturally become more targeted as some industries and firms are able to survive and recover on the back of broader stimulus measures.
And stay tuned to Channel 39 to see today's full announcement. The COVID-19 pandemic has decimated the entertainment industry, closing venues across the world as governments try to combat the deadly coronavirus. Dunedin's long been a spiritual home to many musicians, and some of the city's venues are staging a fight back. Dunedin's Dog with Two Tails is a former New Zealand Cafe of the Year and has hosted world-leading musicians in its arty interior.
In the evenings it became a sort of a health where people could come and socialise. Also importantly, we've got next door Bark, which is the vocal extension of the Dog with Two Tails, and that was a venue for comedians and poets and intellectual debates and pecha kucha, but also importantly, and very importantly, the live music venue. And we were really building up this great momentum with live music coming in to Bark and performing for the great citizens of Dunedin.
Michael Wilson took over the business from his brother Chris a few years back and says Dog was just hitting its straps with bookings up till the end of the year.
Yeah, that was before COVID-19. Since COVID-19, the what's on board has just steadily been rubbed out. We were gutted. We were set up to be the Fringe Club. The people at Dunedin Fringe Festival have done an amazing job organising the whole festival, and that all got shut down. Our what's on board got wiped down from the top. All international acts left, and obviously gutting for them, but also incredibly gutting for us.
Having just paid the venue's GST this morning and going over the books, he says it cost the business $22,000 just to be closed over the month of April. Wilson says the venue was nominated by Christchurch's Darkroom to be part of the Save Our Venues campaign, which is doing the rounds of the country.
Save Our Venues is a boosted campaign. Boosted is a platform. You can go on there and you can help us out to tide us over until there is a time when people can get out and get back together and get close in contact.
The nationwide campaign is targeted at helping smaller music venues around the country, with patrons of the establishments encouraged to donate online. In Dunedin, the South Today. In this edition of Global Insight, Bruce Munro talks with Professor Robert Patman about the possibility of a trans-Tasman tourism bubble.
Welcome, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman. And this is Global Insight. New Zealand is poised to further loosen COVID lockdown restrictions on its citizens. The real impact on the economy, however, is yet to be found. Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
New Zealand's in a difficult situation. We've worked hard to minimise the health impacts of COVID-19, but now we find ourselves in the position of being a trading nation without herd immunity in a world without a vaccine. What are our options?
Well, there's one option which has been spoken about a great deal, which is sort of, I suppose, becoming disconnected in an interconnected world, And that involves, you know, an emphasis on nationalism, self-sufficiency and protectionism. But that option, I think, is unrealistic for New Zealand for several reasons. Firstly, the performance of countries, as we've seen during the COVID-19 crisis, has been uneven. Countries like New Zealand, South Korea, Singapore, Taiwan, they've all performed relatively well in difficult circumstances, but there have been a number of other countries which have performed badly, and their poor performance in relation to COVID-19, and when we're talking about poor performance, we're talking like the likes of the United States and the UK, that has not been due to efficient global supply chain lines. That's been due to the fact that the countries in question haven't got the necessary protective, the PPEs they called it, protective equipment in place to deal with a global pandemic. So it's not the sort of failure of globalization that some countries haven't equipped themselves sufficiently to face this global pandemic. I think a second factor is that New Zealand is a global trader. And some of our most lucrative markets are quite a long way away from New Zealand. And I think what New Zealand should be doing is looking to reinforce the international trading system rather than weaken it. What's become very apparent during the COVID-19 crisis is a lot of international institutions haven't come out of this particularly well. They've been bystanders. That's largely the fault of states which haven't used them. But I think this is an opportunity for New Zealand to show leadership and to act as a bridge builder, not only in upholding the rule of law and endorsing the concept of free trade, but also, I think, trying to act as a bridge to bring that process of gradually bringing the international trading system back.
What give and take would be required for a trans-Tasman bubble to work?
Well, I think this is an interesting concept, which is apparently Mr. Peters, the Foreign Minister, started discussing around about 24th, 25th of April. And it seems to have gathered momentum. Jacinda Ardern recently attended by video link an Australian cabinet meeting and spoke with her counterpart Scott Morrison, and both sides now actively working on creating a trans-Tasman bubble. Both countries, of course, have done relatively well in dealing with COVID-19. I think there's no time frame for creating a trans-Tasman bubble, but it would be a substantial benefit to both countries. If you look at 55% of tourists in this country are from Australia, and places like Queenstown regularly have large numbers of Australians skiing in the region. So this is an important source of revenue and jobs in New Zealand. And it works the other way around. New Zealand has a large community in Australia, and large numbers of Kiwis visit Australia. And in both cases, New Zealanders and Australians engage in repeat visits to their countries. So they're not one-off visits. And I suppose looking at it from an environmental point of view, they have a relatively low carbon footprint because many of these people it's relatively small distances involved. And so that's beneficial as well. So yeah, I think obviously there's no time frame. Health precautions have to be put in place. Both countries have to be satisfied they've got COVID-19 firmly under control. But I think we can look forward to the prospect, and I think Australia will be a big prize from New Zealand's point of view of beginning to get our trade starting with Australia going again.
What would be a reasonable best case scenario for New Zealand in, say, 12 months' time?
Well, I think prior to developing a vaccine, I think what might be the best outcome is, first of all, for the trans-Tasman bubble to be established and for it to be a success. And that COVID-19, there's no reoccurrence or second wave. And then I think, as my colleague, Professor Michael Baker, has suggested, if a trans-Tasman bubble was firmly established and was successful, you could then look to expand that bubble. There is a number of countries which we have very close economic ties with, which have also performed very well, and they also happen to be big trade partners of us. Countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and South Korea, as well as China, could, the bubble, the Trans-Tasman bubble, could be extended perhaps within, say, 12 months, 18 months, to include those countries. So it would become, the Trans-Tasman bubble would become sort of almost an Asia-Pacific bubble with states which have got COVID-19 firmly under control and with, I would say, a strict regime of health protocols being observed. But I think that's perhaps the best we can hope for, Bruce, before the development of a vaccine.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Noho ora mai.
The Otago Community Trust has approved grants of more than $500,000 supporting a wide range of community projects in its April funding round. Chief Executive Barbara Bridger says COVID-19 has impacted donations. Good afternoon, Barbara. Thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Daryl. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Firstly, what impact has COVID-19 had on the April round of donations from the Trust?
Well, a lot of our April grants were already submitted to us prior to lockdown. So what it's meant is a number of them were for festivals and events and projects and things that have obviously been impacted. So we've had a number have been withdrawn. So we probably had less applications actually go through to our board than would normally have gone through. But one of the things that we did set up in April was our COVID response fund. So we set aside $2 million to support those providing services to those in the community most in need, and especially to cover an increase in costs as a result of COVID-19 or an increase in costs due to an expansion of services as a result of COVID-19. So already we've granted $400,000 out of that $2 million fund.
Excellent. To give viewers a bit of a background, where does the Community Trust money come from?
So back in 1988, the government gifted the ownership of the regional savings banks to community trusts. So they established under a separate Act of Parliament 12 regional community trusts, and Otago obviously is the one in this region. So we cover the whole region from the Waitaki River down into Clutha, down to around the Catlin. So basically the areas of the territorial local authorities that are Waitaki, Clutha, Dunedin City, Central Otago, and the upper Clutha part of Queenstown Lakes. So we got the shares in the bank, which we sold over a period of time to Westpac, and maybe some of your viewers will remember Westpac Trust was around for a while, and that was a nod to Trust Bank, which was ultimately bought out by Westpac. And the money that we received upon sale, 131 million, we've invested, and we return the profits to the community by way of community grants.
Brilliant. It's a good background. Thank you for that.
It's a wonderful, wonderful asset for all of us in Otago.
Brilliant. How has the financial fallout from COVID-19 has been very wide-reaching so far, and most people are guessing there's going to be more fallout to come. How has the fallout hit the Trust's reserves?
Well, the Trust has a very conservative investment portfolio, as you would expect as custodians of public monies. So 65% of our investments are in fixed interest type investments. And so yes, we have been affected. Our portfolio has taken a bit of a hit, but maybe not so much as others because of our particularly conservative approach to investments. And also going into this situation, we had built up quite substantial reserves for a situation such as the one we're in today. Trustees were very aware coming out of the GFC back in 2008 that we needed to build reserves just in case something like that ever happened again. And so whilst we have been affected, it'd be incorrect to say that we haven't been. We have not been affected as much as others, and so we're in a pretty sound position, and we are looking to continue our support through a healthy grants budget going forward to the next 12 months.
That's excellent news. How many years has the Trust been donating to community organisations?
So since 1988, so in the last 32 years, we've given away about $180 million to community organisations. It's been a wonderful investment. Obviously, a lot of it predates me. I've been with the Trust 6 years, but everyone there has a real sense of pride in the work that we do, and we feel very privileged to be in this role as a custodian of this wonderful Otago asset.
So yeah, the April round has just finished. How are requests for the May round looking so far?
We've got about 20 or so requests sitting there to be assessed and decided on in May. That's outside of our COVID-19 response fund. We've been doing about 6 to 8 of those a week, so that's increased our workload. They're quick response. There's a form on our website, whereas most of our other grants are through our online grants portal. So we're very committed to business as usual. We might not be in the office, but we're all working remotely. We've had 2 board meetings remotely. I've got 11 trustees, so there's quite a lot of faces all over the screen. But business as usual as best we can during this period, and continue granting to those wonderful community projects that people put their heart and soul into.
So the requests to the COVID fund, would you say they're increasing at present?
Just a steady stream, really. We received probably about a dozen or so requests, and to be fair, we're probably declining almost 50% of those. A lot of people are applying to that fund for things that it wasn't intended to support. You can appreciate that a lot of organisations have lost a lot of revenue as a result of COVID-19, and unfortunately we cannot step into covering the loss of income. We wouldn't have the budget for that sort of thing. So we're very specific about what the fund's for, and so unfortunately are declining a number. But we're also approving a number, and as I say, we've approved about 400,000 already, and the fund's only been going about 4.5, 5 weeks.
What are the criteria for the COVID fund?
So there's 2 specific criteria, and they are really around additional costs. So additional costs incurred to those services or those organisations that are supporting communities most at risk. So, there are vulnerable people in our community, people who are supporting those people and have incurred an increase in costs, and a lot of those have been around IT, so working remotely, tools like laptops and Zoom licenses and things like that, and also an increase in resources, so maybe people to deliver their services. So the other criteria is an expansion of services. So if previously, for example, one of the helplines had been providing a service and needing 2 people to man the helpline, but suddenly because of COVID-19 and an increase in mental health referrals, they're having to employ another person, then we'll step in and try and help them out.
That is excellent news. Okay, Barbara, thank you very much for your time today. It's very enlightening.
Thank you very much for having me, Daryl. All the best.
And time now for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Beginning with the situation, temperatures will become milder over the weekend as a northwesterly airflow arrives over the region. But rain arrives in the west and south on Sunday as another cold front is due to approach. In the southern towns, light southwesterlies, cloudy skies prevail. The Catlins heads for 13 degrees, while Balclutha, Lumsden and Gore should all reach 14. Heading across to the Central Lakes, it's due to be warmer here as well, with light winds and mostly clear skies. Wanaka and Queenstown head for 18, and it should reach 19 in Alexandra, with Tiano set to reach 14 degrees. In the northern towns, light winds and some cloud are also the order of the day here, Timaru heads for 17 and Oamaru heads for 15 degrees. Twizel is set to reach 18 and Omarama is in line for 17 degrees. In Dunedin tonight, expect showers with southwesterlies and an overnight low of 9 degrees. It'll be cloudy with showers at first tomorrow, but they should clear by late morning with skies remaining cloudy. Expect a high of 13 and a low of 7. It'll be mostly fine and sunny on Saturday with milder temperatures and moderate northerly winds, a high of 16 and a low of 9 degrees. And heading to Invercargill, it'll be mostly cloudy tonight with showers and an overnight low of 9 degrees. Clouds should clear and sunny periods develop during the day tomorrow, with fresh cold southwesterlies decreasing. You should have a high of 14 and a low of 10 degrees. It'll be sunny at first at Invercargill, with cloud increasing later on, and it'll be milder as well with northwest winds. Expect a high of 17 and a low of 9. And that's all from the South Today team for this Thursday. For the latest news from the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. Stay tuned to Channel 39 for the latest COVID-19 updates from the government. Have a great evening, and remember to stick to your bubble. Ka kite a popo. See you tomorrow.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.